Thanks. Yeah, it says it is. Okay, thank you, everybody. I know we're all a bit shattered after days and days of meetings about the budget, so I suspect this one will be relatively brief, but we have two main items. One is the one which we have to take in confidential session, which is about the draft recommendations. But the second one is about the council tax reduction scheme. But maybe we could just start. I have too many things to open. I know you've suggested helpfully an order. So do we have any apologies, Celeste?
No apologies for this evening, Chair.
Thanks. Well, do you have a declaration of interest, Ian? No, neither do I. So Chair's announcements are just to thank everybody for getting this far, and it'll be a bit quieter for us. Well, there'll be the budget meeting of full council, but then for the finance panel, it'll calm down a bit. I think our next meeting isn't until early April, so that's some way off. And I must thank especially the two officers on the call, both Celeste and Nigel, for being patient and helping us to get this far. And well done. So in terms of notes of previous meeting, I actually read through them, and I wanted to make one comment, if I may. I know it was about the confidential minutes, but I'm not going to mention, I think, anything confidential. I just felt that when there's a discussion, I haven't noted the paragraph number, about house building in the city, something I think is wrong in the sense of it, and the sentence just stops in mid-sentence. So if you can maybe look back at that, Celeste, just to find what I'm referring to. I don't have many things open at the same time, but I think when you see it, you'll certainly see one sentence just stops halfway through.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe that was the only thing I actually had to raise.
Yes, happy to amend that, Chair. Could I just confirm if that's the confidential minutes or if that is the public minutes?
No, I think it was in the
confidential.
Yes. Okay, but you'll find it, and I'm sure you'll make sense. There was something didn't sound right about house building in the city, but anyhow, have a look at it. Otherwise, I'm going to suggest we proceed straight away. We have Laura and Nigel on the call. Shall we go on to the council tax reductions proposals, the two options? And maybe you could, I think we've all read it, we're now familiar with the issue, but maybe you could introduce it again briefly, Laura.
Yes, hello, Councillor. Thank you very much. Yes, this is a paper to talk about recommendations that the administration makes for the 2025-26 scheme. I have to be honest here, we have a situation where we reviewed our scheme through an external consultant, and the external consultant identified some anomalies which we hadn't taken into account as the service. And what this anomaly is that people that are on universal credit are treated in a preferential treatment to people that are not on universal credit. And that creates an inequality within the scheme, which inadvertently we didn't realise had happened. What happens is universal credit, the way the information comes through from the Department for Work and Pensions, it doesn't include the earnings. So those people that are not on universal credit, their earnings are included. So they get a higher rate of council tax reduction and may actually have more income coming in than other people that have made applications. So looking at the scheme recommendations, the recommendation is that there's twofold options. We could keep the bands as they are. They're very small, quite narrow. So, for example, up to £187 per week income. And if we included all of that income to get rid of those anomalies, it would have a significant detrimental effect to the current caseload. It would raise a saving to the council of £250,000, but about £3 million overall in terms of collection. Instead instead, the administration is recommending that we don't take that approach. We only make a £90,000 saving, and we significantly increase those bands to up to, for example, £100 to £500. And what we're looking at as a scheme was the impact it would based upon the current caseload, and we've tried to make it to the most minimal amount of impact as possible, obviously still meeting those requirements of council to make some savings overall in terms of the whole council finances. So the panel here has advised through this briefing paper that the council has identified that an anomaly has occurred through external consultation. We've addressed it, and these are the recommendations that we're looking to resolve the problem from next year onwards.
Thank you very much. Nigel, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just to say, and Laura's been absolutely clear, basically, in terms of what the administration's view is, and from speaking to Ed Turner, he was keen that we socialise this, and the two Chris's will be aware that I tried to do that yesterday in the group leaders meeting. Basically, there will be a report coming to Cabinet which will sign off the scheme basically that we are recommending for council tax reduction for 25/6. That report will be coming to February Cabinet basically. But Ed was keen that you understand what the administration's view is basically, and this will all be contained within that report. But I just want to make that clear basically.
Thank you very much. Well, and welcome, Chris Jarvis. You're recovered, I hope. You good? Okay. Now, you were at the presentation by Nigel yesterday with group leaders. Do you or Ian, do you have any questions? I have one, but I'll let you ask first. Are you content? I suppose are we being asked which of the options we prefer, or we leave it to Cabinet to decide?
Well, clearly it's up to you what you wish to recommend and look at basically. I mean, the two other councillors may have differing views to, which may well come through their alternative budgets. I think what I'm saying, this is what will be coming through the administration's budget. And we clearly have to do something to the scheme. There is an anomaly. We have picked it up. There is an anomaly, and that perverse sort of effect, unintended consequence, really, that for those on UC, if they work and they earn income, they get more CTRS than those people that don't. And we've tried to address that whilst continuing to support those on low income. You could take another view, basically, should you so wish, that you basically you don't address the people on low income. You just basically change the scheme, sort of thing, and take the full saving. And that's in the region of about £260,000 a year, basically. I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm not suggesting that's what's going to come from the Cabinet when it comes through. They are going to basically rechannel some of that saving back into supporting those on low income. But I think the takeaway message is that as officers we are recommending, and it's been agreed by the administration, that you have to change the scheme to change this anomaly, which is in the methodology at the moment, basically. So but at the end of the day, you will have a view as finance panel, and no doubt lead members will have a view within their groups as well, basically.
Thank you. I mean, if I give my own opinion after comparing option 1 and option 2, option 2, I mean, I think the anomaly is an anomaly and it should be corrected. I doubt anyone will doubt that. When I looked at option 2, I was just looking by band group, i.e. 0 to 25%, 25, by the reductions. Option 2, which in some ways seemed a good option, I think the difficulty I had with it is that it actually reduces substantially the number of households that are in the, if I've got it right, I don't have it open now, that get, is it up to 100, to get 100% reduction? Yeah. And then it's increasing in what I'd call, I think it's bands 3 and 4, or 2 and 3, I forget. And one thing which occurred to me, and I just to make a simple suggestion, but you have the numbers and you could check this, I thought first of all, you've got the bottom band, if you like, lowest income, which has been hit in numbers relatively considerably. And then you've got slightly higher income groups that are benefiting, numbers, they're more are in that group. What if you, instead of having 75 and 75 bands of income, and then you end up with 50 at the band 4, what if you just made it 50 and 50, just a uniform 50, but raised the upper limit for the band receiving 100% council tax reduction, maybe by 50? I have no idea how much you'd have to raise it by in order to achieve your desired revenue target. But it just struck me that this proposal could be criticised for hitting those who will get the full council tax reduction hardest in numbers. Now, very few people will make the comparison, but it just seems this is being compared with the existing scheme, which I know is wrong, but and compared with option 1, it's slightly regressive in that sense. Do you get what I'm saying? Just to play with the bandwidths and maybe make them standard at 50, that's easy to understand, but then play around with the upper limit for the lowest income band.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand, Councillor, I have got the paper in front of me. You're right. Those changes, when you look at the third table, you have got 1,545 at 100%, and if we changed it to 0 to £500, that would drop by 447.
Correct.
Okay, and then you would have the same drop in terms of at 75% by 83 people, but then you would have a higher increase in the 50 and the 25, and you would have a final fall off of 265 people wouldn't qualify at all. In terms of your question about the types of bands, okay, so at the moment we apply a 5-level band, so 100, 75, 50, 25 and 0. And that's to get around the issue of what we would call the cliff edge. So if you had, for example, narrower, like less bands, but a bigger scope, you would get a bigger cliff edge. And so how do I describe it? So when you're on normal benefit and you have a per penny allowance, you get a very small chance of a cliff edge. Where if we went down that suggestion of doing a up to 50% and a below a 50% allowance, you would get more people having a dramatic change.
Yeah, because the bands are narrower,
Yes, and so we can play with the bands. So what we did as part of that modelling process was we took everybody's income into columns, and we tried to work out at what point were we grouping as many people in their current band. And we always try to make it round numbers, because our experience is on round numbers, the public understand it. So if you had like 50p, for example, then people tend to not know with their salary the impact, because if they decide to do some overtime, they can work out the impact of overtime, or the impact of their child tax credit, or the impact of their universal credit, what it's going to be. So we tend to also do round numbers, which is again what we've done in the 500s, 575. It's easier for them to work it out because they can go onto a benefit calculator and they can see the overarching impact.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think all I was anticipating possible criticism when we have the discussion of this in council, of people saying, but look, if you give that comparison with, if you like, option 1, option 2, and the current system, it looks as if the people getting the maximum council tax reduction are being reduced significantly in numbers, and it might be therefore interpreted as a very regressive suggestion. The only way you could get around that was by increasing the upper limit for that starting band. And then you've got the question of how do you then finesse it to get the money back in the higher bands? And that's why the only easy way I could think, because I take your point about nice round numbers, is instead of 75, 75 and 50 being the widths of the bands, to make it 50, 50, 50. But I know the cliff edge will always be there because people move between bands, lots of administration, and they will get a bit of a shock. Now, I mean, I will defer to you as someone who knows the administrative load and all the rest. But I'm just anticipating a potential criticism.
No, and I absolutely take that on board. Thank you.
But I don't know. Could I then ask another question, which I get asked very often? I suspect other councillors are. People who are in jobs where partly they're paid weekly and you have some 5-week months, partly I had a case, someone was terribly distraught yesterday. She works as a carer, and the carer company for whom she works made her redundant. They've lost their contract, but they paid the redundancy pay, and they paid in one fell swoop. And so immediately she's lost universal credit. She's lost all the associated benefits for her children, and like free school meals, whatever. And she's having to pay a higher council tax. I've always wondered, but this is maybe not just about council tax reduction scheme, but I've always wondered, is there any possibility of smoothing erratic incomes, like 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks? Do you have any possibility of, let's say, doing a moving average of 3 months?
Okay, so in theory, let me just think about this in terms of our regulations. No, we can't. If I just go back to your example of the redundancy, the reason why Universal Credit does that is because it matches income tax rules. So the income tax will take that redundancy into account for that period in which it's paid for. And it, like you say, it won't apport. So say, for example, a person's got 2 months worth of salary in their redundancy pay. It won't spread it over the 2 months. It will say for that month, or in that financial year, you've received it. Universal Credit will do the same. So in answer to that lady who's obviously sadly been made redundant, if she gets to the end of her appropriate period in her UC, she makes a new claim, her income will be 0 and she will get all of her benefits back. So it will only stop for that 1 month.
Okay.
So she needs to reclaim it because her income for that month is 0.
Okay.
That will be the same in income tax. So if she's made redundant, for example, in this financial year, her tax code will reflect it. But then in theory, she rings up next month and says, I'm on 0 income. She claims JSA or Universal Credit. It will adjust her tax code again.
So I can get back, and I gather what you're saying. But there are many cases of lumpy. I mean, like the 5 weeks, 4 weeks, which is an easy one.
Yes, so the 4-week payment.
Jobs, and so on,
Absolutely. So the 4 week salary, and you're right, because obviously in theory you get 13 months worth of 13 payments within the financial year. You're absolutely right. And there is a piece of case law that's waiting to go to the Court of Appeal on this, because like you say, those people that are outside of their own control, because they don't stick their salary into a fortnightly or a monthly payment, they are being detrimentally affected. You're right.
Okay, so I should tell this resident that if after getting this bigger pay, and they lose Universal Credit and all the benefits that go with it for the next month, if it's 0, they can apply back to you, if you like, inform you and get the money back.
Yes, absolutely. So say her appropriate period is the 10th to the 9th of the following month, and her payment was made on the 31st at the end of the month. That means then on the 9th, she reclaims her Universal Credit again on the basis of 0 income. And then she would make a change to us in council tax reduction to say, my Universal Credit is changing, just to make you aware. And then we'll get the new Universal Credit Award comes in. It will go back up into a amount and we'll readjust her bill again.
Thank you. Sorry to press that, but you've explained it very clearly.
No,
are there any other questions about the council tax reduction scheme? I see none. So I think in this case, are we meant to note or recommend? Are we meant to I can't remember. I don't have it open. Can you tell us, Celeste, are we meant to recommend, note?
I think it's to note this paper because it's not a formal paper. It's a briefing paper based upon the Cabinet report that's due, Councillor. So it's just to note what is coming later to Cabinet.
Thank you. Okay, may we note it? I'm sure we may. Thank you very much. So let's now go
Could I
on.
suggest, by the way, Chair,
Yes.
it might be useful to have some follow-up questions after the meeting because this was published this afternoon,
I know.
so I've had no sight of it. So I'll hopefully take a chance to read it over the next couple of days and raise questions then. I can't really do that now.
No, I think that's fair. Is that okay? It's really partly for you, Celeste, to note when you're going to write up your notes.
Yes, that is absolutely fine, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I only just finished reading it literally as I was logging on to the Zoom call. Thank you. Okay, that's a good point. So a couple of days, that would be enough, yeah? Is that okay for the other two of you if you haven't had a chance? The Chris Jarvis, yeah? And Ian, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So let's now, I suppose, whatever is the rigmarole, can we now go into private session? Because, I mean, I can't remember. It's the next thing about the work plan. I think that might be the next one. Is that correct? Thanks, Laura. See you again very soon, I'm sure.
Yes, so the work plan was before this item, but if you're happy, if the panel is happy to rearrange the order of the agenda, we can take the work plan next in this public session, and then we
Yes.
close the meeting into private to
Yeah.
talk about the draft report.
I mean, have you had a chance to see the work plan? I looked at it. It seems perfectly correct. Yep. Okay. Thanks very much. So that's noted, approved. Thank you. So let's now